Okay, cool. So welcome to Squat Seminar. Squatting is a huge part of what we do, and it's very easy to screw up. So before I get into squat form and correcting squat form, I want to go over some of the major things that we usually see. And then that way you might recognize one of those things in yourself. So when we talk about corrections later, we can tune those in. So major things that we see in a squat, and we're going to start down on my feet. So I'm going to move the camera down so you can see my feet. Okay, so my feet are dark. Better over here. Actually, even better. Now you can see my feet. Okay, cool. So we're going to go right here. Cool. So common things that you'll see are either feet popping in, which is pronation, or feet popping out, which is supination. The other thing that you'll see is weight too far back onto the heels, which is super uncommon. Majority of people you'll see popping up onto toes. Okay? So that's where we start with our feet. So, simplest mental and physical cues to hit that area is really focusing all four corners of the foot down into the ground. So if you feel any corner of the foot lifting, so if you consider your pretend foot here, if either you feel the inner side, outer side, front side, or back side lifting, then just make the correction needed. The only exception to that is the wiggle your toes cue. Your toes you want to take out of the equation, and you don't, and you want to be able to lift them. So from the pad of the feet up, oh, okay, hold on, pause. Okay, so we talked about feet pronating, supinating, rocking forwards, and rocking backwards. The other, obviously everything's connected, so then we move up into the ankle, and 99% of the problem that is going to come from the ankle is ankle mobility. So I will simply show you this angle right here. That is my personal ankle mobility on my right side compared to ankle mobility on my left side. And you can see a significant difference. I mean, how small is that gap versus I get to a pain point right here. So ankle mobility plays key, and ankle mobility is part of the reason why you will see that heel adjustment. And when we're looking at that heel adjustment, it's because, and it's jumping a little head in the chain because it's hitting knees and ankles, knees and hips, but really a squat at its core is mobility through the ankle, mobility through the knee, and mobility through the hip. So Reagan, that's one of the ways that we might be catching, is that if the mobility on one of those three joints isn't equal, then that's where you're going to get compensation through another joint, causing muscle imbalances, causing things to work harder than they need to, simply because one joint doesn't move as effectively as another joint. So in my case, where it's my ankle, specifically my right ankle, which is less mobile, that's where we can get into some of those stretching and mobility techniques, which will then increase that mobility, which will increase the range, which will reduce the likelihood of injury. So the easiest way to adjust that mobility is to set yourself up exactly like I did and simply press into the point of tension and hang out there. Just live in that tension point. And for me, I get stretch up through the calf as well as through the front of the foot. So now, as that simple stretch gets more mobile, a way to get it a little deeper is to grab a little bandy band, attach it to something. Oops, missed. Wrap it around the foot. So now this band is trying to pull me back, and I'm actively pressing against it. So I'm going to open up the band so it's flatter across the top of my Achilles. So now I'm pressing into the band. So see how the band is set up here? Yeah, and then press in. And then from there, you can adjust your tension point by pressing down in through the ball of your foot and then releasing. So, yep, right here through the front of the foot and then release. And then as you get more and more mobility, that's when you can start adding books to get more weight, add a weight plate, or simply even press on it from the top. And you can now notice after I did what? 3 simple rounds, I've already, not greatly, but slightly increased that mobility.
So Betsy, my problem is I'm hypermobile.
Okay.
Right? All of my joints.
Okay.
So I tend to stay past the point in all of my joints. Right?
So then creating a stopping point, just a physical block. So that might mean putting something in front of your knees. So as you come down, okay, there's my stopping point. I know that I'm only going to go that far so it doesn't put you into that hypermobile state. Does that make sense? Cool. So then moving up the chain, we're going to get into knees, so knees, really, we've got a couple things going on. First being that mobility issue. If your knee doesn't flex fully, you're not going to find a full deep squat. It's just never going to happen. And then that in combination with the ankle flexion, I mean, you get both of those moving in, and all of a sudden you're stuck. So, easiest fix for that is actually going to come from the heels. And normally I would do this with a plate, but a dumbbell works as well. And Marina, when we had you on heavy back squats, this is what we did. So you're simply going to take that plate and put it under your heel. So then now I don't have to worry about, because I've got assistance through the ankle, that knee has now more room to move. And we have to work less on the stiffness through the ankle. So again, Regan, you're looking at that opposite problem wherein that's where maybe even raising your toes a little bit. So that will then, here, I'll come back to this shot. So by raising your toes, that's going to help you hit a more natural stopping point. So beyond the mobility issue, the other big one that we see is tracking in or tracking out. Tracking in is going to be showing weakness through the inner thighs. So the easiest there is to work on the strengths. And then tracking out is majority of the time going to, again, be a mobility issue, is that your body naturally wants to push open instead of staying parallel. And here's where, except for the falling in, because that's something we absolutely want to work on because that's where the knee pain is going to come from. But as far as the turning out, the foot turnout and whatnot, that falls into the U-boo category because there is no one way to correctly do a squat. For different bodies, especially female bodies, our hip width and our hip density don't lend well towards a neutral narrow squat. Just simply from we have more girth back here, there's more going on, and the way their hips are set are more open, even if we haven't had kids yet. It's just by nature. Majority of women are going to find an open toe position and a slight knee tracking out position more comfortable. So unless you are doing a particular style of weightlifting that is judged on how parallel your toes are, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Because again, for me, I hit here and my knees collapse. I turn my toes out even 5 degrees and my knees track perfectly. So beyond the strengthening of the inner thigh, which we do a lot of, our crossovers, our banded ab and adductions, just turn your feet out. Just turn them out slightly. It's really not a big deal. Any questions on knee tracking, knee issues explicitly? No, we're good. Marina, you're good?
Yes. Are you going to talk about like weight balance in a squat?
Yep.
Okay.
We're getting there next.
No rush.
So moving up into the hips, which will get into some of the weight balancing, the most common error that we get through the hips is leaning too far forward. And that comes from a multitude of things. Number one being when we're sitting 90% of the day, our butt is relaxed. And so it's like, oh, I want to relax. This is a more relaxing position. I can go up and down right here a lot longer than I can tracking up a tall spine. Also, looking at your core strength, if your hip flexors are not strong and if your core strength isn't strong, that's where we're going to get that paunch, and that's where we're going to get that pain in our hips and back from the pressing out here. So, leading into the weight balance. Your weight balance is going to depend on where you're holding your weight, where your toes are tracking, and what's the goal of the move. So, if I am looking at a parallel-toed half squat, my chest will naturally fall some, and my weight is going to want to lean forward, but you want to counteract it into your heel. Okay? 99% of the time, you want to counteract into your heel. However, and that's an unweighted, we're just doing quick squats. Once we move to something that is weighted, and I'm not using my big guys because I don't want to. We'll just go with my Power 8. You want to take the position of the weight into account. So anything that is front loaded, you want to work extra hard at making sure you're standing up tall so that it's not turning into a deadlift. Because all of a sudden our squat, even though we're still bending our knees, has turned into a deadlift. So anything front weighted, you want to stand up even taller and work towards tracking that spine neutral up and down the wall, sinking into your hips. Now, because of the nature of what we're doing, we are doing very little backloading, but on a backloading, you are going to be a little bit more forwards based upon the backload and come more into this position. Marina, does that cover your weight balance question? Megan, what additional hips questions do you have?
I don't know that I have any hip questions per se. I just know squats hurt. Like I'm in a lot of pain after squats with my hips. And that could just be my body mechanics, like the way my body is made because of my
everything.
So I hate squats. I do them. I know they're good for me, but they just really put me into, like I often get back spasms afterwards and low hip and glute spasms throughout the night. It's a fun thing to sleep with.
No. So is there a position, and I mean, I guess we haven't really talked about, quote, squatting positions, but if you consider a truly narrow squat with feet in, which we're going to be looking at this almost yoga chair pose, versus a parallel neutral, which this would be a parallel neutral, to a neutral toes externally rotated, which is here, versus a full wide groin, does one aggravate more or less than the other?
I can tell you right now that I can do a chair pose all day. Like I love chair poses and I love to stand in a squat. You've watched me. If I'm standing long term, I will squat, but I'm in a full-on wide leg, toes totally turned out, butt dropped almost to the floor squat. And I can sit in that position for hours.
Perfect. So there's your body's preferred squatting position. So instead of doing the neutral stance, either do the narrow stance or do a full wide stance. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Okay, I've just always had people tell me, you're doing it wrong. All men, by the way, all men trainers, but.
Well, as far as a traditional Olympic lifting standard squat position, yes, you are doing it wrong. A traditional squat is feet just slightly at or near hip width, toes tracking forward, knees tracking forward, chest lifted. Men created a squat. Women's bodies don't trend to that specific position. I know that I can't find it quickly, so I will find her squat stuff, but I'm working on the Girls Gone Strong female training course. It's a women's certification, and one of the founders of that certification used to be a high-level lifter, and she actually shows some examples of different lifting form and whatnot So I'll find that. It probably won't happen tonight, but I'll find that and I'll throw it up for you guys to see.
My other question is, how important is it to keep your knees from passing your toes? Because that's the other one that I've gotten, like, your knees are passing your toes, you're gonna hurt yourself, Stop, and so I'm constantly paying attention. Can I see my toes? Can I see my toes? Can I see my toes? Are my knees going past? And it's like,
Again,
it's comfortable to me to do that, like far lean back. I don't know. Again, male trainers.
Right. Nothing against male trainers. They just are as in tune to how the body and the mobility works in a female. So, no, it's not the most ideal for your knees to track over your toes. However, if you are fully mobile, which I am not, and you go to that full low squat position, there is a strong likelihood your knees, if not just barely skimming your toes, they are going to press over your toes slightly. It's just by nature of the position. So, no, in a hyper chair pose, you don't want to be up on your toes and pressing your knees past. No, you don't. In a grand plie position, again, based upon mobility, your knees might very well spill over your toes. What you're mostly worried about here is that you're not collapsing in and putting undue pressure on the internal rotation. It's the main points for safety on a squat are making sure you're not putting undue pressure on your lower back by releasing your glutes and doing what's considered the butt weight. So as you start dropping down, you will notice, I'm going to do it correctly first. So you'll see my hips stay fully locked in and neutral. What you'll see a lot of times is people just start out here and then tuck it. That's where it becomes dangerous because you're putting undue pressure on your lower spine and you're not holding your core and your spine stable. The other one is going to be working with imbalances caused by immobility through the joints. But a lot of times that back popping will be from immobility through the joints or imbalanced muscle strengthness. If you have one side that's really strong and one side that's really weak, you're going to see one knee doing this all over the place, and then that side needs to be strengthened. Anything else for me? Are you feeling more comfortable about squatting?
Yeah, I think I'm doing the wrong kind of squatting for my body.
Yeah.
What I'm told I should be doing versus what works for my body. Because I'm pretty good. I hold my core, protect my low back. I'm usually pretty good in that in squatting. I'm hypermobile, but that's just my mechanics.
Yeah.
I can't change that.
No.
So I'm usually
you have to work with your mechanics, which it sounds like the more traditional squat form has been fighting against instead of working with. Yeah. All right, cool. Marina, anything from you? No. I know we've worked on your squat form a lot.
Yeah, because I was trained in that same like heavyweight Olympic style lifting, powerlifting form. And yeah.
It hurts. It hurts. Unless your body is built a certain way and unless you train it to stay within those parameters, it hurts. Yeah. And when it hurts, you don't want to do it. And when it hurts, you're more likely to get hurt.
I did notice when I was doing the ankle mobility exercise, like I have decent mobility in my ankles, but when I get to about here, it starts to hurt the top of my knee.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
just like overcompensating at that point.
Yep, exactly. Which is why we do the mobility exercise from here up here. That really is working that hamstring, and then it's working that mobility through the knees and the feet. And the other one that you can do here is rocking a little bit side to side to really start working through. And then again, finding that tall stance up here. I mean, we haven't done a lot of just like moving through our mobility stuff, which there's millions of ways to do it. But yeah, so that would be helpful, is to get some of that going. And then also check, because you were saying that this motion, the abduction motion, is something that's sore. So it's coming from that glute medius right here, which is then pulling counter onto that knee.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, ladies, I am going to sign off of the recording. Goodbye. Thanks for watching.